Sometimes you go to YouTube so you can learn how to do something for yourself, and sometimes you go to YouTube so someone can give it to you for free. Yes. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reality Reimagined. I'm an award-winning photographer and Photoshop artist that specializes in fantasy composite art. In the retouching series on this channel, I've essentially made videos showing you how to do the foundational steps of retouching, which is to do frequency separation, dodging and burning, and enhancing the eyes. And in those videos, I ultimately populated the layers that were needed to do it and showed you how to make an action of your own to populate those different layers. I'm making this video today because I have been amazingly blessed to get emails and messages from people who are watching my channel on YouTube. And, you know, on an Oprah side note, it's my video, I can do what I want. They have said some of the nicest things to me. As an educator and as an artist, these are some of the nicest statements that have been said to me about my endeavors in teaching and in sharing my artwork and passion. So you folks who have sent those messages, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you very much, because it is a great reward, it is a great blessing, it is a great gift to be able to teach and to share knowledge. And I mean this with all sincerity. Thank you for going on the journey to want to learn, especially to learn something like Photoshop, because I understand how incredibly daunting it is to step into this. So you are to be commended for doing that. These folks have contacted me, and the messages have not been, oh, I don't know how to make an action, it's too hard, can you just give it to me? The messages have been telling me how excited they are to learn and that they have made some mistakes in making the actions, but they've finally figured it out, and questioning the whole process of how to go forward. So in the description below, don't go there now, watch the rest of the video, it'll be brief, I promise. In the description below is a link to my Google Drive that has the Retouch 3.0 action in it. So you can download that and run the action, and you use the exact same action that I use for all of my artwork in Photoshop. Whenever I'm doing a retouch, whether it's a retouch of a human being or a building or an other inanimate object, these are the exact same layers that I use, and that action is yours to have. Now, I do want to stress, it is vital that you learn how to make actions in Photoshop, because actions are incredible time savers. They are wonderful tools for efficiency. So you do need to learn how to make actions. Yes, there are nuances and if you make mistakes and so forth, but once you make a few, you'll get that rhythm because it's common sense and you'll start understanding it, and soon you'll be making your own actions. But the Retouch 3.0 action is yours to have. And my action is mine, of my creation. There's no secrets or great shakes to it. It just populates all the different layers that you need for the techniques that I like to use for frequency separation, dodging, burning, and enhancing the eyes. So let's go right into the Photoshops, and I'm going to run the action and I'm going to explain it all to you. So I'm going to hit Retouch 3.0. Brief timeout. If you're new here right now and you don't know frequency separation, you don't even know what I'm talking about when it comes to frequency separation, dodging, burning, you've never done those things before, look at the card above and go to the retouching series, because that will explain everything to you. There are deep dives into frequency separation, dodging and burning, and enhancing the eyes. So please watch those, because I'm not going to be explaining how to do all of those retouching steps. I'm just explaining what the action is all about and a brief demonstration of something unique within my action. So when you run frequency separation for the Retouch 3.0 action, it's going to populate these two layers that you see here in the layer stack, and then it comes up with this message. And this message says, go to filter, noise, median, and reduce the detail, a selection between 2 and 6 pixels, blah, 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 blah. You have to hit stop to be able to do what that message just told you to do. And you cannot go forward in the action. You should not go forward in the action until you have done what that just told you to do. So come up to filter, noise, median, choose a selection between 2 and 6 pixels. 3 looks good to me, hit OK. That's going to essentially create our first blurred out color layer for the frequency separation process. Now, nothing else is going to happen after you hit OK. You need to go back to your actions window, go to the Retouch 3.0 action, and then hit play again. And now it's going to populate a whole bunch of different layers for frequency separation, dodging and burning, enhancing the eyes. And while it's doing that, I want to explain my process. When I use this action, when I do this process of retouching, I do all three of these techniques at the same time. They are not independent of one another. So I start with frequency separation. I start cleaning up the skin detail using the mixer brush to enhance the colors and move them around. And then I start painting new colors into the scene. When I'm ready to go into dodging and burning, I will start the dodge and burn process globally, and I'll come back down to frequency separation to use frequency separation as a method to enhance dodging and burning. When I get to the eyes, I said this in the video for the eyes in the retouching series. I get rid of the capillaries and so forth in the eyes, the whites in the eyes. I will remove those during frequency separation, which means when I'm in this folder up here that says for eyes, when it's time to get up there and I start working on the whites of the eyes, I will come back to my frequency separation layers and retouch the eyes. Or sometimes I'll do it when I start immediately with frequency separation. I'll retouch the capillaries and take them out of the eyes and so forth. So I do all of these techniques at the same time because, in my opinion, I almost said professional opinion, like I'm you know what? I'm a professional photographer. So in my professional opinion, after 20 years of working on Photoshop, I recommend that you do frequency separation, dodge and burn, and enhancing the eyes all at once, because they are all tools to retouch the image. So let them live together, because you will find things you can work with them together to be able to create a really great result. So let's go through the folders. I'll explain all the layers and what they mean and what they do, and then we're going to do a demonstration. Not a frequency separation, but of something else. So the first folder is frequency separation. When the action finishes, it lands you on this detail layer. So let's go down to the bottom of the window. You have two color layers here. This is the main active color layer, this one right here. This is just a backup. So in case you make mistakes on this one, or you need, for whatever reason, you now have a backup that's right there in the layer stack. The next is a gradient adjustment layer. This is to balance out the different skin tones within the image. Again, if you don't know what that is, visit the retouching series and learn you some retouching. So then these two blank layers here, they're below the detail layers and above the color layers. The first one says Paint 1 Skin Retouch. The next one says Paint 2 DB Foundation. That's what the demo is going to be about. Because when I do dodging and burning, I also utilize this layer to do some painting, and I'll explain that here in just a moment. Then these two layers here are your detail layers. This one is the main detail layer. It has a curves adjustment layer clipped to it. You can ignore that. It has a black layer mask on it, so none of it's being revealed. This is something that I use in gelled photography, and I use it very, very infrequently. The detail backup here is just a copy of the main detail layer, but it has been turned off, because if it was turned on, all the details, all the skin texture, everything would look really, really wonky. This is just a backup in case you need to do any texture grafting or you make mistakes on this one. You have a backup of everything. So then and then of course the black and white adjustment layer at the top, because it helps to see white, black, and gray when you begin using the clone stamp tool to start cleaning up the blemishes within the skin. So that is the frequency separation group. I'm going to close that. The next group is for dodge and burn, and it's turned off. So when you're ready to go into dodge and burn, you have to turn it on and then expand the group. We have a black and white adjustment layer at the top, because again, when you dodge and burn, it's good to see white, black, and gray. And then we have curves adjustment layers that are set for burn, dodge, and then these two middle ones, color highlights and highlights. These are something, again, that I use when I'm doing any kind of like illustrative fine art work, or when I'm doing gelled photography work. I will utilize these two. They're worth exploring. They're pretty self-explanatory. Once you start painting white onto these masks to reveal the effect, you will definitely see the look and what it's going for. So experiment with those, but your base curves adjustment layer for burn and for dodge are here. And then the third group is for eyes. It's also turned off when the action completes. You have to turn it on. These are numerical. So you start with number 1, and this is for the whites of the eyes. Again, if you don't know how to do any of this, it's in the retouching videos. So for the whites of the eyes, there's a hue saturation adjustment layer that is clipped to it. This is for the whites of the eyes, just to remove some of the reds and yellows that you may see in the eyes themselves. The next one, number 2, is for the iris boost. This is a curves adjustment layer similar to dodge. It's been pushed up, the anchor point, it's been pushed up a lot to give you a lot of vibrant or luminosity into the iris itself. So you would paint on this black mask to reveal it. Now it also has a hue saturation adjustment layer clipped to it, and I'm going to double click on the icon to pull it up here in the properties. The saturation has been increased significantly, because this visually lets you see it as you start painting on the mask itself. So if you like the way it looks, good for you, go ahead and keep it. But I highly recommend that you start bringing the saturation point back down. Again, it was just, I have a mint in my mouth and the mint is attacking me. It's attacking me. Anyway, so bring the saturation down just a little bit, because it's going to be very significant. But I have it there because Sometimes, depending upon the lighting pattern of the image that you're using this action on, this curves adjustment layer here may not be bright enough to start seeing the overall effect. If you don't see a boost in luminosity as easily, you will definitely see the color that's associated with it. So the next one is number 3. This is an iris boost. This is a vibrance adjustment layer. This is meant to go in conjunction with this, but it is not absolutely necessary that you use this. It just boosts the overall vibrance of color you would paint on this mask to reveal it within the iris. And then the final one is for the iris ring, the black ring around the iris and the eyes. This is just a curves adjustment layer similar to burn. It's set to a blending mode of color burn. So that you can start painting it on this mask at a low flow. I would suggest like 10 to 15% and start painting it around the iris. You can also see that this adjustment layer itself, its opacity is set to 25% because this isn't meant to be heavy-handed. You can also explore using this to start painting in some darker detail within the iris itself so that it will help the brighter detail stand out a little bit more. So that is the retouching 3.0 action. It populates all the layers for these 3 different groups. You start with frequency separation and you move on up. So now let's come to this blank layer here, paint number 2, dodge and burn foundation, and let's talk about some stuff. When you dodge and burn, you're introducing artificial highlights and shadows into the scene itself. And in the dodging and burning video in the retouching series, I gave a demonstration where I showed you how to take a gray circle, and by painting white and black on opposite sides, it created the sense of 3-dimension. It made it look like an orb. That's the goal of dodging and burning. Yes, it's used for skin retouching and cleaning up blemishes and so forth. But from a global dodge and burn, you're enhancing the 3-dimensionality within the image. You're making it feel the shadows stand out, the highlights stand out, and it helps to sculpt it before your eyes. When you do that, you're using curves adjustment layers that, depending upon the blending mode that they are set to, so the burn curves adjustment layer here is set to a blending mode of luminosity, which means it's telling Photoshop to ignore the color data within the image. You're only introducing artificial highlight and shadow, white and black, into the scene. You can change this blending mode to go to normal, and it will give the illusion that it's affecting the color. But it's not actually putting in color to the scene. It's letting the luminosity values play into the color, which gives the illusion that the colors are getting darker, but they aren't actually getting darker, but they are, but they aren't. So this blank layer is meant to be used during the frequency separation process here to actually sample the colors within the skin and paint it into the scene, but reduce the brightness or increase the brightness of the colors that you sample so you can paint in realistic dodge and burn, realistic highlights and shadows that are using existing colors within the image itself. Let me give you a demonstration. So here is our little orb that we talked about in the previous videos if you haven't seen it. So let's imagine this giant orange orb is sitting on a field of grass in a blue sunny day. All 3 of these colors, the blue, green, and orange, I just picked a certain hue of orange, but I made sure that the color was set to 50%. And I'm going to explain that here. So let's look at these layers very briefly. Here is our orb. If we turn off these 2 curves adjustment layers, this is just 50% orange of the hue that I chose. And then I added 2 curves adjustment layers set to luminosity so that they are, one side is set to dodge. So this side of the circle is brighter. This side is darker. This implies that a light direction is coming in from here, coming down, hitting the orb, making this side brighter. As the light travels around, it makes it darker here. There's a curves adjustment layer right here. This is the shadow that we see. Because again, the shadow makes it feel believable that there is a light source coming in and affecting this object. So enough with the lighting dynamics, right? We understand that if we were to retouch this circle, and I want to make one side appear brighter and one side appear darker, I would dodge and burn it. But I'm going to clip a blank layer to this and to give you the demonstration, but pretend this blank layer is the Paint 2 DB foundation layer in the frequency separation action. So on a blank layer, I'm going to turn off these 2 curves adjustment layers, hit B for brush. Let me make my brush head just a little bit bigger here. And then I'm going to hold Alt or Option, which will defer the brush tool to the eyedropper tool. So I can sample the existing color that's in the scene. And when I sample it, it changes my foreground color here to that color. If I click that icon, I bring up the color picker foreground color window. This is the hue in degrees of what I chose, the saturation percentage of it, but here's the brightness, 50%. So if I were to actually select this number and change it, and let's say go to 95% and hit enter, I've now changed my color. It is much, much brighter, as you can see here. On this blank layer, if I were to paint with a low flow of 5% and I come up to the top of this ball, you know what, let's turn on the curves adjustment layers again so we can see the overall effect. If I were to start painting actual bright color at the very top of this, I'm making it feel like that's the first point of contact where the sun, the light source, is hitting this orb. Black and white curves adjustment layers, they only can take the illusion of color transition so far because they're luminosity. They're light information, not color. So now I can come to my foreground color here, picker, the foreground color, and I can come to brightness, and now let's take it down to like 87%. Now let's go further. Let's go 77% and hit enter. I'm making the color darker. On this blank layer, let's pretend paint 2 DB foundation. I'm now going to come to this edge where that highlight was painted in and feather in this new darker color around that perimeter and then paint it further down. I'm cascading the colors using real color so that it makes it feel like this is the brightest spot, and as it travels down, real colors are showing our eyes the transition of light. So in that same regard, in this process, when I am using this blank layer here, when I am doing dodging and burning, like I would typically add a burn right below her nose in this area right through here, and I would do that on the burn adjustment layer here. But again, it's only introducing luminosity information. So on paint 2, I can B for brush. Let me make my brush smaller. I can hold Alt or Option, sample the existing colors in the scene. So now my foreground color is set to this. I can click it. Here's the brightness percentage of this hue that was sampled from the real skin tones in the scene. I can lower this, and let's go down to 45%, some arbitrary number. And then I can start gently painting that into the scene on this blank layer at a low flow. And I'm painting in realistic burn, realistic shadows to the scene based upon color values, not luminosity values. And I can continue to cascade that percentage of brightness down further to really paint it in. And all of this is on a blank layer here that is below the detail layer, but above the color layer. So it's creating a realistic dodge and burn. Could you do dodging and burning solely this way and not use the curves adjustment layers? Of course you can. But the dodge and burn working in conjunction with actual colors makes a more realistic result. And the only way that I can really prove that to you is for you to do it yourself, to practice it and see it, and you'll start to see realistic dodge and burns that arguably are better than just doing a luminosity-based dodge and burn to the image, again, when it comes to creating a sense of three-dimensionality, the global dodge and burn. When you're doing a local dodge and burn, more of that is to replace skin tones, or to replace skin texture, and to enhance it and so forth within the image itself. So recapping very briefly, that's what this blank layer is meant to do. Do I do this process of adding real colors into the scene to augment the dodging and burning? Do I do that for every single image? No. I do it for close-ups. I do it a lot for inanimate objects, buildings, pets, clothing. I will do it a lot for clothing. It's just circumstantial. But I implore you to explore it. I explore and implore you. Whatever the right combo of those words are. I implore you to do that and to explore how to utilize this. You'll start seeing its effect, and then you can figure out for yourself the overall balance of how much you want to actually use color to dodge and burn and how much you want to use luminosity values to dodge and burn. So to finish up this video today, again, the action is below. There's a link in the description that will take you to my Google Drive where you can download the action. It's Retouch 3.0. And it will be exactly the same thing that we just demonstrated today. I strongly encourage you to explore how to use this action and to use the steps of frequency separation and this idea that we just talked about with color to augment dodging and burning. And I want to say thank you again. I have been an instructor in teaching for a few years now. I teach at conferences. I've led my own workshops. I've written tutorials for magazines and for blogs, and it means so much to me to be able to give this knowledge back. I know how exciting it is to begin to get agency in your own endeavors of art and in creation, and to be able to start bringing your imagination to life by learning tools from other people who have that wisdom. I know how exciting that is, and it means so much to me to be able to do that now and to give that back. I want to see people grow. I want to see people's knowledge in art and in creativity grow, and I want to see their passion grow in it so that they too can start sharing their knowledge with others. And forgive me, it's at the end of the video. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I'm going to step onto a soapbox here for just a second. When humanity can join together and give wisdom and knowledge, and we share wisdom and knowledge freely with each other, that's how humanity is going to make our world better. That's how we as a civilization are going to push back against the darker parts of our human tendencies. How we can heal our wounds and make our world better when we start sharing our wisdom and our knowledge, and we talk to one another and we communicate with one another. That's the whole point of this YouTube channel. Yes, this YouTube channel's goals, and I'm being honest and transparent, is of course to be able to monetize it and make a part of my living from sharing this knowledge. But I'm not doing it just so I can have a Scrooge McDuck money bin and swim in it every day. I'm doing it because there is a need inside of me to share what I have learned. Because one of the greatest joys, and I've talked to some teachers who have meant much to me in my life, one of the greatest joys is to teach and to see people's eyes light up and that excitement. They get so excited because they see their own potential right in front of them. And I had a hand in that. It's a wonderful feeling, but the best feeling comes from those people who have learned from your wisdom. They've iterated on it, and they come back to teach you something you didn't know. It's the coolest thing in the world. And I want more of us to do that. So whether your industry is photography or Photoshop, whatever, you're an engineer, you're a doctor, whatever it is, share your knowledge with people. Share your abilities with people. Our world will become better when we can all start doing a little more of that and a little less pointing out our differences. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for being a part of this channel. If you're new here, please consider liking this video. If you again like the content you found today, you like the action, like the video, consider subscribing to the channel. New content debuts each week in photography and Photoshop education. When you subscribe, click the bell icon. You'll be notified of that new content when you return to the YouTubes. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey. It means so much to me. At the time of this recording, I'm sitting at 998 subscribers, and I'm hoping for those last two to reach my first goal of 1,000 subscribers and to continue to grow beyond. So thank you for going on the journey of learning. Thank you for watching this video today. Until next time, I will see you out there in the world of Photoshop.